Yes.
Oh, great. That's wonderful. Okay, bye, everybody.
Goodbye.
Take care, sweetheart.
So our next question is, in what way is this story about sex trafficking?
I don't think it is. I think that's
I-
ridiculous.
Yeah, I didn't think
Her-
that either.
Her entire take on the story was from the 21st century.
Yes.
And that bothered me, but
Yeah.
that's just me.
Well, what is it that we see in sex trafficking today? New concept, but what is it that we?
White slavery. Actually, it's not white anymore.
It's slavery. It's not necessarily white, but the current practice is to basically take women from their native lands, either through deception or force, and put them in another place where they have no support, where they're isolated, and use them as a way of revenue. And then in the United States, the biggest day of sex trafficking is on Super Bowl. There's more of that on the day of Super Bowl than any other day of the year, which I find horrifying. So what does that tell us about?
You mean more people are brought across, women are brought across the border, or
Women are
just
brought in
abused?
specifically for sex on Super Bowl, that the people who go to Super Bowl make more use of that than any other day of the year.
Oh, okay.
You know, so what you're doing is you're bringing a large crowd together of predominantly men in what could be described as a testosterone filled event, and they take it as a part of the whole Super Bowl
Ritual.
Yeah. You know, that just comes with the going to the game.
Yeah. In Taiwan, when we lived there, young women were sold because their parents were poor. They were sold to traffickers in the city, you know, in the same country, not across borders. And the young women then worked as prostitutes, and they wore a laminated ID, kind of like when you worked at Boeing, with your picture, and they had to work out of a bar. Their 1/3 of their income went to the bar, 1/3 went to the woman, and 1/3 went to the government. And my husband, my sweet dear husband, was the assistant brothel inspection officer in the naval facility. They had to inspect brothels every 90 days.
Right. So within the military,
Yeah.
there's training about you're supposed to report sex trafficking, but there's also in my point of view, scandal of the fact that the military is the reason that sex trafficking happens around bases.
Yeah.
You know, if there were no demand, there would be no supply, but because there is a demand, there is a supply for that. And
the Taiwanese government, the Chinese government said it was that they did this basically to accommodate the Americans, that they wouldn't have, you know, apparently a problem in Taiwan, which is not true, but without the American demand. But it's sort of very similar in you know, the biblical sense, you know, that what young people who were poor, were women who were poor, were used as commodities
Mhm. Still happened in the past, happening now. Any other thoughts about that? I mean, it is something that's been with us. The power imbalance has been with us always. That there are people who are vulnerable and will be forced into a life that's not of their choosing. We've not ended that. That still remains with us. It was there in the beginning, it's there now. In what way is this a story about abuse?
All of it is under the cloak of entitlement. Abraham was the man in the situation, and he was entitled not just to his wife, but to anyone else that he wanted, you know, and other and other people who did not have the means could not resist, could not say, you can't do this to me. I'm afraid we're in that kind of situation in the world now, economically. There's a lot of power, you know, political or economic power that some people have, and they take advantage of other countries. Yeah.
Well, so there's a triangle in this story. There's the relationship between Abraham and his wife, and then there's the relationship between Sarah and her servant, and then there's the relationship between Abraham and Sarah's servant. In what way is there abuse going on in that triangle of relationships? Well, all right. So what the author Joe Levine said was that there was overt and covert abuse. So the overt abuse was Sarah's treatment of Hagar. You could also argue that Hagar was also abusing Sarah by lording over her pregnancy. And then there's the Abraham, distressed by but unwilling to intervene in what was going on. So
He's a coward.
The covert was, I'm not touching this. I'm distressed by it, but I'm not touching it.
Yeah.
So I guess, Marlene, the question that you would raise is, was it really abuse back then in that culture?
Right. The culture looked down on a woman who was married and didn't have children. And I mean, you know, obviously it wasn't her fault. It might have been the husband's fault. Doesn't matter. They didn't know. It didn't matter because to them, she was not being blessed and there was a problem. So she was mocked or ignored or whatever. That's the way things were. I'm not going to say it was abuse. I mean, yeah, we look at it now and I wouldn't want it to happen now, but that was the culture.
I don't disagree with that, but is that looking at through God's eyes? I mean, there's the eyes of the world, and that's just an accepted practice, but what was surprising to me about the role of the angel was an emissary of God. And what was the angel doing?
Well, the angel was trying to get them back on the track that God had intended, because Sarai was just going off on her own with all of her own ideas. Do this. Okay, whoops, that didn't work. And so the angel in both cases was just getting them back on track.
But the angel didn't bring punishment to Hagar.
No, he said, go back. Things are going to be okay. You're going to have a big nation, get through it, and then things are going to be great. Simple way of saying it, but that's he was guiding it all back the way God had intended it. At least that's the way I see it.
Okay, so that brings me to the question,
Well, which begs the question, why doesn't God does intervene, I know that.
here we go.
But where is God? Where is God in this?
Right, so go away. I'm going to share with you so here's the Encyclopedia Britannica. We're just now looking at this from history rather than biblical point of view. And the first sentence, Ishmael, son of Abraham through Hagar, according to the three great Abrahamic religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, after the birth of Isaac, another son of Abraham, through Sarah, Ishmael and his mother are banished to the desert. A minor figure thereafter in the traditions of Judaism and Christianity, Ishmael continued to play a foundational role in the Islamic tradition. So he's blessed in a different way, but he's still blessed. Does this mean that Islam was part of God's plan too?
Might have been. I mean, he called them children of the flesh as opposed to children of the promise. They were still God's children.
Right.
Right. So God promised that Ishmael would raise up a great nation of his own. That happened. I mean, that is history. It did happen.
Is God's plan that there should be a separate two? I'm looking at it now in terms of our situation in the United States with, the white Christian nationalism and against the Black people or people of color. And I'm going, even back in the time of Abraham, this was a monumental split between, it was the children of Isaac and the children of Ishmael. And they, to this day, cannot reconcile. Is this what we're doomed to? Are we supposed to solve this? Or is this the way it's supposed to be?
Well, that's why I'm raising it, because I don't know.
Reconcile.
Yeah, because it says Ishmael assisted Abraham in building Islam's most sacred structure, the Kaaba in Mecca. Like, I know intellectually about Ishmael and Islam, and I know intellectually about Isaac and Christianity, but I have never integrated these two stories as a way of understanding God's will.
Yeah.
Because I mean, it's an honest question. I don't know. I'm not saying I know an answer. I don't know an answer. I just know that
and the obvious, the obvious, not obvious, but the solution would be Christianity, because you have, the Isaac and the Ishmael in, sides. And then Jesus comes to say both are beloved children of God. But it doesn't seem to be working out that way.
And maybe that's what God is wanting, is to come back together.
Yeah.
I mean, that would just seem obvious.
Right. The other thing is, now remember, these texts are written by people from their point of view, but in the Quran, their story says that Abraham attempted to sacrifice Ishmael rather than Isaac.
Well, the Quran didn't come from God.
How do you know?
I thought that was written by Muhammad.
No, but Muhammad was inspired. He was up on the mountain. So yeah. And maybe the confusion is meant to be.
Yeah.
But Muhammad was seen as a prophet in the same way that Jesus was seen as a prophet.
Right.
But wasn't
the Quran talks very lovingly and respectfully about Jesus.
Well, and Abraham.
And Abraham,
He was their common father, and Jesus was Muhammad's brother, and he was respected within the Quran as a prophet. He was seen as a prophet, just not the prophet. In Christianity, he's not just a prophet, he's the prophet, just as Muhammad in the Quran is the prophet, not a prophet. I don't have answers. This is a question that was raised in trying to understand what role this story has in helping us understand God. And I'm unsettled because I don't know.
Well, it never would have happened if Sarai had kept her mouth shut.
If what?
It never would have happened if she'd kept her mouth shut.
Well, I don't know about that, but Sarah had the faith to trust in God instead of laughing when it was said that she would conceive in her old age. I mean, that's why her son was named Isaac, was because it was a reflection of her laughter. And she denied it, right? I mean, they asked her, "Did you laugh?" And she denied it, that she had laughed.
So she didn't have the faith in God taking care of the situation. She wanted to take care of the situation. I mean, don't we all do this? I mean, obviously, maybe not quite with the same consequences, but
yes, we want to take charge, take control. If it looks like things aren't going the way that they're supposed to go.
So God made a pretty good deal out of a bad situation.
So is that what this story is illustrating about God? Is God can?
No, I think it's illustrating that we don't need to try to take charge over God's plans.
Yeah. Well, and the biggest suffering is exactly that. People, the suffering that they went through was all of the intricacies, all of the intrigue in the family, Sarah being jealous and Hagar wanting better conditions. And
this is definitely a story of family drama, right?
Yeah. It's like the housewives of whatever,
Yeah. So
Beverly Hills.
I do take away from this that we are our own worst enemies. I mean, that part I get. And then she raised the story of Moses, and she claims that the story of Moses is parallel to the story of Hagar. Why? What is it that she saw?
They both wandered in the desert.
Well, no, but it was the thing about, right, that it was the fact that Moses was taken into Egypt just as Hagar was taken out of Egypt. So they're strangers in a strange land. They both are. And yet they eventually, it's not quick or easy, but eventually they both thrive where they found themselves, which we hear in the Apostle Paul when he says, I've learned to be content with wherever I'm at.
Mhm.
Well, but Moses also was placed by his mother among the reeds to be found by the, whatever it was, the daughter of the Pharaoh. So, and raised. So he, he was in a sense an Ishmael, he was.
Right. He was a foreigner, first of all, and he was brought up in a household other than his birth household, as she was. And in the end, God brought something good forth out of both of their stories.
Mm-hmm.
They were both used by God for a purpose. So anything else you see in the shoe on the other foot, if you will, when it comes to Moses?
I thought he was kind of a red herring. I didn't really.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I was trying to figure out how he fit. The only way I could figure that he fit was, that he paralleled the Hagar story.
Right, which is what she was
But
saying, that there was a
but not
parallel
really,
there, because they're both taken out of their native birth land and removed into another land where they lived as foreigners. I mean, people knew Moses was a foreigner. He may have been raised by the Pharaoh's daughter, but
right.
So my last question, and again, I have no answer to this, it's just a question, is what does this story challenge us to be or not be? Because I would argue it has both don't be like this and be like this elements in it. What does it challenge us to be? She said merciful and kind. That was her bottom line out of this story, be merciful and kind.
Faithful.
So that goes back, Marlene, to your comment that if Sarah had been a person of faith, this wouldn't have happened.
Yeah.
And if you're faithful, the merciful and kindness follows on.
Because then it's an expression of your faith rather than her treatment of Hagar.
I think it's helpful to us in understanding fundamental differences between people, because in this situation, there was no real way to solve the problem. They couldn't all like move in together and be happy. Obviously they couldn't let the two boys play together.
Yeah.
So my thought is that it's about how we need to look at our inborn prejudices and try to overcome them. Be tolerant of others. I don't know.
Well, I feel the story challenges me to make sure I don't treat other people as objects. That Hagar was not an object or a commodity. She was a person. So don't, which is, I think, going back to, if we try and look at one another to see the God in them, what's in them that is of God, and we would treat one another differently.
what was really heartbreaking was that I've read this stuff before, but where, well, Ishmael was 13 apparently,
Yes.
time, but they were in, they were in the desert without water, and she put her son a bow's length, whatever, that distance apart, because she was there to see her son die.
Yeah.
And that was just heart-wrenching,
Mhm.
and I think sometimes, and I know this is trouble, but I tend to be more, I respond more to um, the pain of people who look like me. I think and I think maybe that's what we do in the United States. We tend to have a lot more empathy day to day for the Ukrainian people than for the Iranian or the Syrian people who are, in what do you call it, refugee camps. And I keep asking myself, why do I tend to pay more attention? And it's because I have more in common with those people. And it makes me mad at myself that I'm not more sensitive. And I think possibly racism come into play here. And I don't like to think of myself.
I don't think that, Jackie. I think that why you relate more is what they have lost is the same thing you would have lost. You can relate to what they lost.
Yeah.
Whereas in a different culture, you're not going to be able to relate to what they've lost.
Yeah.
I think maybe that's more of it.
Some of it, yeah. But I always think, because after I taught in Compton and got to know and love the kids and the families that I work with, I was a different person. And and I will never ever be able to be the same as I was before that, and I want to be like that with other people. I want to be able to respond to the humanity, to the God's presence in them as much as I do to the God's presence in the people I recognize. And and maybe that's part of what it's very hard.
It is hard.
Hard.
For me, Sarah is a mother and she wants what's best for her child. And
Yeah.
Hagar is a mother and she wants what's best for her child.
Yeah.
And I, as a mother, want what's best for my child.
Yeah.
But I don't think that should blind me. I'm watching House of the Dragon, which is a follow-on to Game of Thrones. And you see that a lot of the fighting within the royal house is about which child's going to be in the line of succession. I mean, that's really what that story is about, and all the tension that it creates. And I guess for me, the story challenges me to go beyond the one individual to looking at everybody wants the same in terms of what's best for the ones that they love. Wesley says, look for what you have in common rather than for what divides you. And what I think we can relate to is, I don't care what color your skin is, as a mother with a child, to watch your child die has got to be the most horrific experience there can be.
Yeah.
Regardless of culture or skin color. No parent wants to see their child die.
That was the saddest image. It just, yeah.
Well, I don't want to end it on a down note, so what do you take away from this story that you think guides or enhances your understanding of God? I mean, does this for example, I'm not saying this is the answer, but just for example, does this reinforce the idea that all means all, or the idea that God cares for the foreigner? Or, I mean, what do you get out of this story as a principle, as something that would guide how you look at situations and people?
God can clean up our messes.
Yeah.
So when we go astray, God can get us back on track. I think you also pointed out that God can make something good come out of something that's a mess. How about you, Jackie?
No, I was just thinking about what Marlene said. Yeah, I think I like what you said, Marlene. And like God works with us, you know, like I remember driving, you know, to school. This image just came to me when you were talking, and driving to school, and I knew I had something important that I had to say to a kid, you know, who was in pain, who was dealing with something. And I didn't have the words, you know. And I remember just driving down Los Coyotes Diagonal in Long Beach, California, and saying, please, God, give me the words. And somehow the words would come. I'm not sure they were the best words. There were words that seemed to help. And I think that's kind of where God is. God works with us. You know, when we, you know, I always say the 7 scariest words in the English language. God, I place this in your hands. And yet they're the most exciting words too, because amazing things happen. So.
Okay, so the next one in this series is, let me see.
This was kind of cool to do it this way, by the way.
Yeah.
It's different.
Yeah.
This one.
Hi, Elsie. I didn't get to say hello to you or to sing to you. Probably a blessing.
Okay, so we've done session 1, Hagar. Session 2 is the story of Naomi, and I'll do like I did today. I'll send out some links, some Bible verses that tell this story, and then some questions about it. And so Naomi is for next week.
Okay.
And then the final, it'll be David, and then the last of this is Job. Yeah. I kind of like the sequence of this because I feel like we're going from
worse and worse and worse.
Worse and worse and worse and worse. You know, it's like, let's not jump into the hardest one. Let's start someplace where we can relate and work our way through it. So Book of Ruth is next, but the story of Naomi is what we're focusing on. And then I did talk to, let me stop sharing that. Pastor Desi, and I'm not wedded to anything. There will be an all-church study on Sunday after church in person and Thursdays online of All the Good, a Wesleyan Way of Christmas. Because we said we would do whatever the theme was, I had suggested that for our Tuesday study, we do O Come, O Come, Emmanuel. And we don't have to do this. If you want to do All the Good, we can. But in talking with Pastor Desi about it, she agrees that All the Good is good all church study because it's not, it doesn't presuppose as big a background in the Bible. And that the O Come Emmanuel does require more, it's a deeper dive. It requires more understanding. So she really doesn't have a preference one way or the other as to what we take on. But I leave it up to you as to which way you want to go. I do have 6 copies of this, which I can give out to you. We're not doing it at church. We're just doing it online. So I can drop these off and everybody can
I've got
have
a copy.
their copy. And then,
I've got a copy already.
right.
I
and
think we
then-
should go with that for Tuesdays.
Yeah,
The church is giving out all the good to whoever wants to do it as well. There's 60 copies and Desi will order more if we give out the 60
Yeah.
that we have.
And you
So
guys, Marlene, you and Elsie could come on Thursday to the Zoom.
if
So
you
it would
want
be
to
just
do
like
that.
this, except, you know,
Thursdays are rough days for us.
oh, okay,
Tend to have other things happen.
yeah. Okay,
Okay, so what is your druther? Sheila said she'll
Yeah, I
do
think
what the
that
group
one
wants to do.
Good.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we'll leave it the way it is. All righty, anything else for the good of the order?
no, we can do, for the, that other one, the Thursday one. We could make it possible for you to, we'll give you the book, you get the book, obviously. But then we can make it possible for you to access the video on your own.
Yeah.
So that way, you might not be in the discussion group, but to be able to see the video. Okay,
Yeah,
Sure.
video's not a problem because I have Amplify, so.
Yeah.
We'll watch the video on the both sessions, the Thursday and the Sunday. We'll both get to see the same things.
Yeah. cool.
All right.
I like your collar, Marlene.
Oh, thank
Yes.
you. This is my jammies.
It looks cute.
Well, it's warm and
Oh,
this
it's
is,
nice and tight, so that
It
it's
looks-
nice and warm.
It looks cool.
yep. Well, we finally
Okay.
are having weather that's actually October or fall weather, it's like,
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
yeah, it happened.
And we don't have to
Man.
water anymore. Yay.
Yay.
Yay, yeah,
Rain to
That's
rain
great.
and there's snow in the mountains and I love it. I'm thrilled to see
yeah,
snow in the mountains.
yeah,
Yeah.
me too. I was out before I came online,
Hmm.
and the fog was hanging low over Bell Hill. And all
Oh.
I could think of was people at the top probably can't see
Right.
anything.
So Jackie, how are your treatments going?
This is my taper down week and next week. And I'm just like thinking, I've got to think positively because you can have results following, afterward.
Mhm.
And my whole thing is, again, it's kind of like with suffering, you try to overcome as you live your daily life, and stuff like this, and the prayer group, and just the things I'm doing are so helpful to me. And that's what's really, really important.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I want you to feel lots of love and support.
I have to tell you something hilarious. I went and had, because I was supposed to have this ultrasound, and part of it was just in my arteries, and everything's great. My ones going to my head are really good, which made me happy. And they had found that aneurysm back in August, which changed the trajectory of my treatment and all that. Well, they did the ultrasound of my abdomen, and they can't find the aneurysm now. So
Oh, wow.
Really?
Amazing.
I'm gonna have to have another test, but it's kind of like, it's who is it? I was talking to somebody, she goes, "It's a miracle." Anyway, I don't think it's that, but it's just funny that now they can't find it. But oh well.
Accept a miracle.
Yeah.
We'll take it. Yeah, we'll take it. Good news is good news.
Yeah. So okay, I love you guys. You're just family.
Virtual hugs to everybody.
Love
Take
you
care.
all. Have a
Bye.
good week.
Love you. Bye-bye.